Hi, I'm Janet Shields Scott, and you're listening to JanetFitBeautyStyle.com, a lifestyle talk guide with expert advice on beauty, fashion, wellness, real estate, entertainment, and fun celebrity secrets. Hello, and welcome to each and every one of you. I'm your host, Janet Shields Scott. Today's special guest is Dr. Teresa Taylor Williams, CEO and publisher of the popular New York Trend lifestyle newspaper in New York City. Teresa, she'll be here discussing how her deceased husband's double life betrayal and her heart-wrenching scare of breast cancer turned into a book titled Death of a Good Girl. But first, let's get to our inspiring quotes for today. This one is from Lucinda Cross, marketing consultant on Instagram. Queens don't compete, they adjust one another's crowns. For more inspiring quotes, log on to my Instagram page or my Facebook page, Janet Shields Scott. I'd like to give a mention to passpros.com, a great website for all your sports memorabilia. You are listening to a Janet Shields Scott podcast. Our special guest today is Dr. Teresa Williams, mother, CEO, and publisher of the popular New York Trend newspaper, which is in New York City. And she's here to share how she rose above her deceased husband, well, her husband at the time, husband's deep deception of a double life while battling a heart-wrenching health scare of breast cancer. Say hello to everyone, Teresa, Dr. Teresa.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be talking to you, Janet, and thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, and thank you for being here. And towards the end, I'd like for everyone to know how you played a part in my life back in New York a while back. But before we get into any of that, first let's talk about what's been happening with you here. Now, we say that you were going through this deep deception of your husband's double life, but it didn't start out like that, did it?
No, Janet, my husband was an exceptional person. He was a great father and a great partner. He was a great supporter of all of my efforts, and he was very successful as being one of the top and few black men who rose on Wall Street.
Yeah, I remember that, and I remember how he doted on you as well.
Yes, well, everybody remembers that. We were both entrepreneurs, and he fostered that entrepreneurial spirit in me. In fact, he was, my right hand and my support for me starting New York Trend and encouraging me to go out on my own and start my own newspaper almost 32 years ago now. And so, what we did have in our marriage was friendship and trust. And I trusted him 100%, or as much as anyone could trust someone, because he had earned that trust. He earned that trust. He maintained that trust. He was about family, our children, and me.
And then you have, three children?
I have 3 children. I have 2 girls and a son.
All right. And what age are they at?
My son is now 31, and my daughters are 25. They're twins, if you remember.
Oh, yes, that's right. Right. Okay, now it started out wonderful with all the great accolades in terms of a marriage, like you said, the friendship, which is something that I hope that we all would strive for in our marriages, is to have our mate as our best friend. But then it took a turn.
Well, it was a long time before it took a turn. We met as friends, and we were friends and colleagues for about 2 years. And then we were married for 30 years. So out of a whole 32 years of some kind of association, I would really say that this happened very quickly. It was short-lived, and If I put a time frame on it, it was probably not 2 years. It was maybe less than a year and a half of, his betrayal.
Mm-hmm.
But I did not find out about any of this until after he had passed and was buried. I don't want to say that it was a shock and I was ignorant to the fact that something was going on, but it was a shock. I was not ignorant, but it was not something that I was suspect of, because it was not out of his normal behavior to have women who are associates or men who are associates, and that this is exactly what I understood to be going on.
Okay, but then you said that, because I was reading in your excerpts from your to be published book, that you received
Death of the Good Girl.
Yeah, so you received a call though from someone, I guess from that woman, and the paramedics was there or something. Because you said, yeah, because I like the part where you said, and then the paramedic, because when she had you on the phone, you said something to the nature, or you could hear the paramedic say, well, if she's the wife, then who is she? And then you went on to say, you're a hoe. I just like, okay, who kills marriages, which is another excerpt from that paragraph.
Well, those are two different chapters in the book, Death of the Good Girl. When I thought of the title, saying it was Death of the Good Girl, I really did mean that the good girl was dead. And to address the first issue is that I found out that my husband had gone on a business trip, which was, again, within his normal range of activities and nothing to be suspicious of. And he was away for the weekend, and we talked every day. And so I picked up the phone that day. The phone call was kind of late, because usually we speak in the morning, and I think it was about noon. And when I picked up the phone, it was not him on the other end. It was someone screaming in the phone telling me about my husband, and that from what I could decipher, he had collapsed, and the paramedics were there trying to revive him. And so that went on for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And I just asked them to please tell me when he was breathing again and what hospital they were taking him to. And so I would say that lasted maybe about 40 minutes of them coming back and telling me, we're still working on him. And then at the termination of that time, the paramedic came back on and said, well, are you coming over here? And I said, well, I'm not in this state. I'm here in New York. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, I hate to give you bad news over the phone. But he said, but wait, before I say this, who are you? And they had not asked me that in the entire conversation. And I said, I'm his wife. And he said, if you're his wife, then who is she? Mm-hmm. He then told me that my husband's heart was flat, and they were calling the morgue. And at that point, I collapsed in the street. I was over a friend's house, and I just collapsed.
So what was going through your mind though during that time, and when you got that call from this strange woman?
The call was, the person identified themselves as, someone who was working with my husband, who was in the same town, and they had a project that they were either talking about or.
And where was this? What town was this?
This was in Georgia. Mm-hmm. And so I wasn't sure what was the relationship. And, my husband traveled all over the world, and I did not piggyback him to ask, are you talking to a secretary? Are you talking to an assistant? Mm-hmm. Is this person related to, your business on Wall Street? Because businessmen travel, and he has always done it. I accompanied him when I was able to, and everything was very out in the open.
Yeah, so but I imagine at this time though, getting that call and then you just kind of thought, well, the most important thing is what's happening with your husband.
As I was in a walking coma. Now, what you read was part of the excerpts from a book that I've written called Death of the Good Girl, and it chronicles my life and the situation surrounding this incident, and talks about my survival and the many things that I've faced and I think I've conquered. It is something that really brings together how one person can be hit with so many, I don't know if you want to call it tragedies or horrors in their life. Because I just want to say, to update before I finish this, that I was diagnosed. People ask me, what did you know during those months? And like you asked me, what was I feeling when my husband I was told my husband was dead. I had also had on my mind so many other things. I had been recently out of the hospital. A month before my husband died, I was diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer.
Yes.
And had the mastectomy. And 30 days after that, then my husband drops dead. And so it was a confluence of events. And so the shock was just permeated by, his untimely death, and then wondering if I'm going to live. I had children to take care of. And so now going on to part of what you read was an excerpt from an additional chapter where I don't think that I was even directing it at this person that got pushed themselves into my home, not literally, but figuratively.
Right.
And I wrote about how if you have a slight crack, if your door is opened and it's just a crack, anything can come in. And I equated that to, well, I had a crack in my home and I didn't know about it, and someone pushed their way in. And so I thought about how, we try to be, and I have always tried to be I was raised to be a very polite, professional, well-mannered little girl that grew into a well-mannered and polite woman. And so there were certain things that I did not say. There were words that I was not allowed to say. And there were words I never used in my life. But Janet, when we're pushed up against a wall and you find out that you're in a fight or a battle for your life, for your survival, for your children, and things are swirling around you, you have people coming at you, and then you don't know who your enemies are.
Yeah, that's true.
And I did not know anything about this person. Then I had to go on lockdown. I had to go into a mode I had never experienced before, because I had multiple battles I was fighting. I was fighting for my life, and I was fighting
cancer.
Forces that I did not know what their power was. How close were they to me? Was this someone, a friend? Was this, I didn't know any of that.
Okay, and so but when did, because you said that you had the call, then he died, and then you said you found out later.
Yeah.
Okay. So when was the moment, because you're saying that you had this crack, and wait, let's kind of rewind to there. What was that crack? When you say that if you have a crack in your life or your relationship, what type of crack are you speaking of?
Good question. I felt like there was a crack created by normal circumstances within the framework of how we both operated and the demands of our lives and our professions. And not to make excuses, but, living with a partner or a spouse who's on Wall Street, you talk to anyone who's the partner or spouse of someone on Wall Street, and you know the roller coaster ride. And at that time, in 2007, 2008, the market was tanking. and we were going into the housing crash. Um, the market was taking severe hits, and so the life of a stockbroker, anyone in the financial businesses, they ride that wave. You have great highs and you have great lows. And as best friends and business partners, I always listened and I was always there to advise him. And I think that he was going through a period where, after being on Wall Street for over 30 years, he was tired, and battling the discrimination. I mean, a 30-year career on Wall Street for a black man is exceptional.
Yes.
And I lived that life with him. And so, we don't know, as a clinical therapist, I counsel people who, are trying to rectify problems at work versus not bringing them home. And he did not ever want to upset me. And I think that in his way of maybe trying to protect our family and protect me, he just sort of kept this to himself. And I could see that, he'd been stressed before. We've been through 2 market crashes, Black Friday. I could tell when he was highly stressed, but he always talked to me about it. And with me not being myself and not making excuses again, but I wasn't present. And so maybe something that he thought he could bring to me, I mean, I could have died. This breast cancer came out of the blue. It was a very serious tumor.
Sure.
And so it was just a multitude of events. And so
were there any signs, though, that what were some of the signs that you may have seen that you just kind of brushed it aside, that maybe things were different in your relationship where he might turn to another woman?
I didn't see any signs of relationship issues, but I did see signs of him being more fatigued and more tired than usual. Talking about, which he had never talked about before, maybe retiring from Wall Street. The travel was getting to him. He was traveling more than ever because he was working on things internationally. And, good financiers, they always prepare for, well, when Wall Street is not doing well, what's the next step? And so I did not see things specifically wrong in our relationship, but I did see them as far as his work situation was concerned. And he had been on Wall Street a long time, as I said. He was older now, You start when you're in your 20s, and now you're in your 50s.
Right. And, so you think also that sometimes they say that as you get older, that midlife crisis, that kind of thing could have popped in there?
I think so, absolutely. I think that he was primed age for a midlife crisis. Like I say, I counsel family, and I do family and marriage therapy, and you can see when men are going through that. And I think they go through it worse than we do. And we don't suspect that. I'm losing my hair, my belly's getting a little bit bigger, and they become less confident, and they start to become very focused on their physical appearance. And, am I attractive anymore? Well, I know she loves me because she's been with me for 32 years, but is anybody really attracted to me anymore? Should I use hair dye? Should I dye my mustache? Should I, they're trying to kill themselves in the gym, and men go many ways. Some go and, get that Porsche or that sports car, and that's their midlife crisis, or a motorcycle. And then others, test the waters, or they get a wink or a smile from someone who doesn't care that you're balding and your belly's a little big, because they have a different agenda.
So then you found out, you said after he passed, how did you find out that this other woman existed?
Well, I found out because there was a correspondence. And in opening that correspondence, which I can't specifically talk about right now, what was in that correspondence from a government agency alerted me to information that then let me know that something else had been going on. Excuse me.
Okay, and you can't say what that was?
I can't say exactly what it was.
Oh, okay. All right. And so then when you got that, what were your thoughts and feelings when you received that correspondence?
Again, I was in shock. There was a new attitude that I had to take on. I now was the sole protector of my home and my children and my life. I would take no prisoners. The shock the, of what had happened, and with my husband just dropping dead, and realizing that he had been involved with someone on some level. People asked me, how did you get through the breast cancer? And I said, well, I just went and did what they told me.
Mm-hmm.
But
he was had there. All this weighing on your mind, because a lot of times when you're going through a lot of turmoil in your life can have an effect on your health as well.
Well, you're right also about that, because I had a clear mammogram probably 3 or 4 months before I was diagnosed. But I just was not as healthy as I had normally been. And I guess, my sixth sense was telling me that something was wrong, and I was worried about him. I had lost a lot of weight. And my doctor said, women do get breast cancer like any other illness from just the breakdown of your body and your immune system. Mm-hmm. And he said I was like a poster child for that.
Wow. And so, and what did your kids think about all this too? That was when they found out about their dad, and then also what you were going through.
They were devastated. They were devastated and in shock, like I was. Being a mental health professional, I got them all into counseling and therapy, and we were all diagnosed at one point or another with PTSD because of the shock that we had experienced. And so, they're all fine now.
That's good. That's good, because it's good that you did that, because sometimes people go through things and they go through different turmoils in their life, and they say, oh, I don't need to go get therapy, or I don't need to do this. Mm-hmm. So I think it's great that you addressed it and that you did get the help for it, because it's okay to go and get help.
Yeah, mm-hmm. It really is.
What is your life's lesson from this?
That's a really good question. I don't know what has asked me that. I think I've learned a few lessons. I think the first lesson I've learned is that we get very comfortable and secure in our lives. And, sometimes we think, okay, this can happen to someone else, but this can't happen to me. I never thought I would have breast cancer, because sometimes from a health point of view we think that, well, doesn't our mom have to have it, or our grandma have to have it? And the answer is no. So if I learned a lesson related to health, is that we can contract anything. And so that little tip tells every woman to go and please take care of your health and follow up with your exams.
And where are you now with that, with your health?
My doctor said several years ago that I could say that I had beat it.
Right.
I've been absolutely clear for almost a decade. I'm very happy about that. But I kept up with my visits, and that's what we all should do. The second lesson, I think, is that I've learned is that I had more strength than I realized, and I've been stronger than I knew I was. And the third lesson is that you never stop fighting and defending what's yours. And the final lesson, I think, would be that, we have to have something that we depend upon. And the only reason that I am sounding like I am, and my life has come to what it is now, is that God had another plan.
And then also, I understand that Lifetime and some other networks were shopping your story, wanting to
Yes.
help you tell. And what's happening with that?
Well, it was Lifetime Inside Edition and Investigation Discovery. Lifetime came to me multiple times over about 2 or 3 years. Investigation Discovery and Inside Edition wanted to follow me around for a day and see the life by story. But I didn't want to. I was not in the frame of mind at that time. That was very early on in what had happened, probably after like the second and third year. And being in the media, I know how things are twisted and how things are chopped and edited, and I didn't have any creative input into it.
So do you think in the near future that would be possible to go back as long as you have the creative control with Lifetime or some of the other networks?
Absolutely.
Okay, so where can we, do you have like any social handles that the listeners can follow up on to see when your book is coming out and your movie?
Absolutely. Along with New York Trend, the hard copy publication, they can inbox me on Facebook, and that's under my name. Also, we have a Facebook page set up called Death of the Good Girl, and you can inbox us there. And you can also contact me directly by going to nytrend@AOL.com, which is New York Trend's email address.
Okay, and then you said you have a Facebook under your name. Is that under Dr. Teresa Williams or Teresa?
Taylor Williams.
Oh,
Teresa Taylor Williams.
Teresa, okay.
And then New York Trend is NewYorkTrendNYC.com.
All right. Yeah, so I want to also kind of close this out because I remember Ann Brown with Ann Brown Media, and the two of you actually were a great input in my life when I lived in New York, when I first moved to New York back in the late 80s. And here I'm going to go because Ann would always go. She was your editor at the time of the New York Trend. And I believe you were also published your circulation was in LA and one of the islands as well?
Yes.
Okay. And you say at the end of your book here, I believe your success is measured by the effort you made to reach out, grab a hand, and give someone else a chance to achieve. And I must say that you gave that to me because you published my first celebrity beauty and fitness column, which was at that time one of the first columns of its kind done by a beauty professional. And so your magazine was the first, and so I can say that I applaud you and congratulate you on the things that you're doing now, and I think it's great that you're still standing and you're a strong, beautiful woman.
Oh, thank you, Janet. I mean, when we first met, I was happy to extend New York Trend, and really that's the basis of why New York Trend, I believe, is still standing, because I just wanted to mentor young journalists, and I wanted to help people who were like you, who I have a product, I need a venue for it, I need copy. Come on, let's go.
Yeah.
And I don't think that.
And like you said New York Trend, so you were trending things that people really weren't doing because no one was doing celebrity beauty and fitness back then.
No. You were a pioneer in that, Janet. And so
you helped to lay the groundwork for that pioneering.
Well, I am really, really happy to hear those words. I'll always take a compliment, but never a thank you. It was my absolute pleasure to do that for you, and I always invite people to just write in or send in. Why not get started with me? And over the 30 years, I've had so many young people and professionals come back and say, you let me in when no one else let me in. And one other thing I want to say is that I ran a journalistic program for young women interns. And so many of my interns are in great positions now. One of my best interns is my daughter, Anastasia Williams. She is a producer at Good Morning America. And she
Wonderful.
always says, New York Trend was my first stop. And without you, Mom, I would not be here.
That's beautiful.
Yes, well, I thank you. And thank you to your listeners.
Yes.
And you have a blessed day.
You've been listening to JanetTheBeautyStyle.com, your beauty, entertainment, and lifestyle expert talk guide. I'm Janet Shields Scott, columnist, radio, and TV host. You can like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube. For more fun and informative, yes, and celebrity interviews, log on to the website JanetTheBeautyStyle.com. Remember to love, laugh, and live your life with style.
As we end this, let's take a moment to relax. Take a deep breath, inhale, and exhale. Again, inhale and exhale. As you go throughout the day, stop and take a pause. Chill and relax. Please keep in mind that all things which are impossible with man are possible with God.